Hey gang, Chris is here with Better at BI, and today I want to talk about scaling up. Not that kind of scaling up, not the COVID 15 or 20, although I have a funny story about that. So, another day, another time. So, what I'm talking about is moving an organization from one stage to another. In my world, it's modernizing analytics. It's taking an organization from, let's say, a onesie twosie patchwork of like old type of analytics, which is something like you put in a request, you write down exactly what you want, someone over here writes a query, some sort of SQL, you get exactly what you want, that's it. Open and close. Like you're not really exposed to any of the inner workings, not a lot of outside of the box thinking, not a lot of flexibility. It's just, an old-fashioned way of doing business. Now, that works for some folks, doesn't work for everybody. So if you want to go from point A to point B, you got to do a lot of work. You're going to have to scale up your project. Now, I've been a part of these projects before. I've been a part of some scaling up projects, and you have too, I'm sure, where they just sucked, right? Everything about them sucked. Like the entire thing sucked, even though it probably shouldn't have sucked. Conversely, you've probably been a part of projects where everything was just on fire, man. You thought it was going to suck, but it didn't suck. And it was like so awesome. And you just like, how, what? It's like a whirlwind, right? Well, I read this book the other day called Scaling Up Excellence, Getting to More Without Settling for Less. Now, it's a 300-page book. It's an easy read. It was written by Robert Sutton and Huggy Rao. Now, these two folks did a great job. They collected a lot of evidence. There was a lot of research that they did, as well as other folks. There was a lot of stories that they tell. And so they really go into a lot of detail in these stories. But hold on for a second. This is not the type of book that you're going to read and you're going to leave, you're going to put this book down and you're going to generate a list of things that you have to do. And this book doesn't do that for you specifically. Instead, what this book does is it takes all this information that they accumulated and they wrapped it around 7 mantras, right? So everyone knows, or maybe someone knows, mantras are both things that you say during prayer, stuff like that, but it's also a saying that's constantly repeated to help you stay on track, right? Now, these 7 mantras are, 1, spread the mindset, not just the footprint. Now, what they're trying to say there is scaling up isn't just throwing more people at it. Now, that's part of it. Don't get me wrong, that's a part of it. You can't grow an analytics organization without adding more people, right? But you've got to make sure that everyone is on board with the mission. Yeah, like what are we doing? We're going to scale up. What does that mean? We're going to get Tableau. We're going to get Power BI. We're going to do self-service. What does success look like, right? Because people need to know what that is, and people need to be on board. They need to be willing to do this, because just like training for a marathon, the end result's great, and you can have all the medals you want, but when it's freezing outside and there's hail coming down, do you have the right mindset to continue to train, or do you just put everything away and go, you know what, I signed up, I paid my fee, it's fine, whatever, I'll get a t-shirt, I just won't get the medal, right? It's all about the mindset. Now, the next mantra that they talk about is engage all the senses. Listen, gang, it's 2022 as I write this, or as I'm talking about this. This book was published in 2014. Things have changed, right? We're now in COVID time. So I'm going to borrow, I'm not going to talk about the senses and the smells and the sights and the ears and all blah, blah, blah. Let's talk about vision, the actual physical vision. There's a book called The 4 Disciplines of Execution that's sitting over on my shelf. And one of the key elements of this book is to, have a compelling scoreboard, right? I like to talk about the field goal kicker. It's the end of, we're going into the football playoffs in North America and the NFL, and there's a role, if you're not familiar with the NFL, there's a lot of people who do a lot of different things. And there's one person in particular whose job it is to kick field goals. Kick a field goal, team gets 3 points, right? This individual can do all the work in the world. They can be a part of the same mindset, win the game, right? They want to win the game too. But how do they know that their work matters? How does the kicker know that all that effort that they put into their job helps? It's that scoreboard. When the kicker kicks that field goal and that ball goes through, the scoreboard changes. If you're at the game and you happen to go to the bathroom and get yourself something to drink, when you come back, you don't know what happened. But when you look at that scoreboard and the score goes up by 3 points, you know the kicker did his job. Compelling scoreboards. Now, the next mantra is link short-term realities to long-term dreams. Now, this is kind of a double-edged sword, right? We all have these dreams and these visions. And in my blog, I wrote about how when I first joined the Navy, and there were a lot of guys that would get seasick. And one of the quick, easy, temporary solutions was to look out on the horizon. If you could focus on the horizon just for a little bit, it would kind of settle things down in your head and you can continue to operate. But here's the thing, like I wrote in the book, the day-to-day work of the ship has to continue. You are not allowed to just sit and stare at the horizon for 24 hours a day. There's work to be done, right? So you're going to have to be able to focus, take time to focus on the long term and do what needs to be done. Now, this stuff that needs to be done can be part of the project, or maybe it's just the functions that have to happen, right? Someone's got to keep the lights on. Someone needs to write the reports for other people while we work on these big projects. The book has some great stories about how Steve Jobs was really good at that. That's going to be important. If you're leading the scaling up project, you're going to need to account for that, right? You're going to need to give some bandwidth to your people, set the expectations that their job doesn't end just because there's this new project. And conversely, the project doesn't fall apart just because they have a job to do, right? So there's a way that we have to do that. There's no magic lesson, but you're going to have to do that. The next mantra, and to me, this is one of the most important ones. I think this one should have been number 2. Accelerate accountability. What does that mean? Now, this isn't about being punitive. This isn't about anything negative, although it can easily go there. What I'm talking about with accountability is people need to be accountable for their actions. And you need people on your team on this scale-up project that are willing to step up. Now, I'm not saying you punish them if they drop the ball. What I'm saying is these people need to be able and willing to own their role. You know, you said, hey, man, you said you were going to have this done by next week. Yeah, I know, but I don't know if I can do that, right? Well, that person shouldn't get punished. That person should get helped, right? Many organizations, listen, I'm in an organization right now where I was hired to modernize analytics for the pharmacy. I'm the only one with that mission. The VP that hired me left the organization. And when that happened, my ability to get people to help me on the back end, the data architects, the server admins, that ability went away as well. So how can I modernize analytics if I can't get people to support me? And when I put in a ticket, if the people who I request assistance from can just, in one case, close my ticket, well, then my scaling up project isn't going to work, right? Again, this isn't about punitive action necessarily, but it's about holding people accountable. Now, the next thing is fear the cluster foxtrot. Listen, if you've been in the military or if you're surrounded by vets and you know these things, you know it's not really foxtrot. But I'm trying to make a general education video here, so that's the word I'm going to use. Here's the deal. A cluster foxtrot is usually an accumulation of a whole lot of bits of foxtrots, right, that come together in one, almost a perfect storm. I like to talk about helicopters. You know, helicopters, yes, helicopters do have catastrophic failures, but let's exclude the Jesus nut, that's what they call it. It's the one thing that kind of holds it all together. If that goes out, oh Jesus, you better start praying. Let's talk about the millions of other bolts and screws that are part of a helicopter, right? No one of those things by themselves are going to cause a catastrophic failure. But if you get several of these little failures to happen at one time, that helicopter is going to crash and burn, and it's going to be nasty and it's going to be ugly. But the reason why these helicopters don't fly, don't fall out of the sky is because the maintenance crews do their job. They stay on top of everything. They have routines, they have schedules, they have documentation. They are accountable, by the way. They do what needs to be done to make sure that everything works on that helicopter, or at the very least, not everything craps out at the same time, right? You, as the leader of this scaling up project, or even as a participant, you have to stay on top of things. You've got to make sure that when you're working on these projects, if you see a problem, don't just walk by it. If you know something's going to be bad, raise your hand, speak up. even if you don't know. In my blog post, I wrote about how the Japanese set up this thing called the idea of an andon cord, which is basically a stop on the assembly line. If anybody on the line sees a problem, they can stop the line. There's no punishment involved. If someone sees a problem, they pull the cord, the line stops, people come over, they look, they investigate. If there's an actual defect, they fix the defect or they pull the car off, right? So that the car doesn't go any further than it needs to be. If there's not a defect, there's a slight education. Again, not punitive. It's, oh, I see why you did that. I see why you can see that, but that's the way it's supposed to look, right? No big deal. Again, not punitive, but we have to be held responsible. The next thing is scaling requires both addition and subtraction. Here's the deal. There's a reason why you're scaling up, right? Where you are now is good. It got you here. This is super awesome sauce, but it's not going to get you where you need to be, right? The things that need to happen in order for you to get from now point B to point C, you may have to get rid of some of the things that got you here. If you've got policies, procedures, workflows that worked, right, from point A to point B, you've got to be intellectually honest. If these things aren't going to work for you, if these things are going to hinder your growth, then you're going to have to get rid of it. Stephen King once said the hardest things to kill are your own darlings. What he's referring to is his ideas, his characters, his books. And listen, I'm no Stephen King, and I'm not an author, but I've developed a lot of really cool stuff. I've implemented some really cool projects in my 20-something years of doing this. You know what? The work that I did at Cincinnati Children's Hospital, maybe 8 years ago? Listen, I worked hard. I did a lot of great stuff there. It's all gone, right? They got rid of everything because they've modernized again. They've changed. They've done things differently. And that's okay. It's okay. It has to be okay. You need to look at whatever got you here and recognize it's probably not going to get you where you want to be. Now, the last mantra that the authors talk about is they write slow down to scale faster and better down the road. There's a lot of different ways to take this. There's a saying in the sports shooting and the special ops world, not that I'm special ops, I'm not implying that, but like slow is smooth and smooth is fast. The book talks about how scaling up projects need to be treated like a race car, in that sometimes you got to pump the brakes, sometimes you got to slam the gas, right? Sometimes you just got to move a little bit, shift here and there, and change gears. There's no right or wrong, and there's no particular rule that tells you this, except you can't move so fast all the time, right, that you're going to miss stuff. But you can't move so deliberately slow that a 6-month project is stretched into a 12 to 18-month project. There's no hard rule here. There was an organization that wanted to do a full rebuild of their analytics program in 6 months. Go from one system to a Power BI implementation within 6 months. That sounded like an awesome challenge, but that was an impossibility. It really is. You're not going to go from nothing to everything in 6 months. That's that particular situation. That might not be what you're going to run into, but slow down when you need to slow down, speed up when you need to speed up. Now, finally, this isn't a mantra, but they talk a lot about this in the book. These projects are hard, right? And they take a long time. Back to the first mantra, the right mindset. There's going to be a lot of suck. You're going to have to embrace the suck, as they say. You are going to have to just get in there, roll your sleeves up, and just get dirty, right? It's the ground war, so to speak. The book tells a story of how during World War II, the British night raids, only 20%, I believe, a very small amount of their bombs, 20% of their bombs at night fell within 1,000 feet of their target, right? We know a mile is 5,000 feet. So like 1/5 of a mile, that's pretty far, it's still pretty far from their target. The point of that story, the point of that statistic is it wasn't the airplanes dropping bombs at night that won the war. That was a big part of it. It was the guys on the ground doing the hard work. Any scale-up project you're going to do is going to be that way. It's not the C-suite folks in their offices looking at charts. It's the men and women that are doing the hard work that are going to make your project successful. Be nice to them, work with them. If they raise their hand and say, hey, we think this is a problem, you should listen to them. And if it turns out it's not a problem, then that's okay too. But if it is a problem, don't just blow it off. We have to figure out a way to fix these solutions, right? So again, my name is Christos. That's the book review for Scaling Up Excellence, Getting to More Without Sacrificing, Without Settling for Less, excuse me, by Robert Sutton and Huggy Rao. Thanks a lot. If you like to see more, hit like and subscribe. I'm hoping to have another book review in the next 3 to 4 weeks as time allows. Thanks.